almost ready for Kingwood.
Give me a call if there's any other problems. Okay. Let me know.
Can you stand?
Yes, that's good.
Good to go? Recording's all good?
Recording's good.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Advisory Design Panel in Nanaimo. September 9th, 2021. Oh, I can't do that, Mickey. I've got another screen over here, so if you see me looking off to the side, that's why. So, we have an agenda before us tonight. Number one, call the meeting to order. Just a reminder for everybody who hasn't done this recently or at all, the meeting is live streamed on the city's website and it's also recorded, so you're on candid camera. Second item on our agenda is adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have any additional items or changes or modifications to make to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting tonight's agenda? Excellent, thank you. Item 3, we have minutes from our, I believe it was the 29th, July 29th meeting. I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to review those. Are there any comments or revisions or anything to state about those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting those minutes? Excellent, thank you. And tonight we have two presentations. Whoops, I just flipped a page here, hang on. The first one is for development permit application number DP001238 for 2545 Doctors Road, and it's going to be introduced by Lainey.
Thanks. So development permit application number DP001238 is for a multifamily development with 5 units located at 2545 Doctors Road. The property is zoned R6 low density residential and is designated neighborhood in the official community plan. It falls within development permit area 9, commercial, industrial, institutional, multiple family, and mixed commercial residential development, and the general development permit area design guidelines apply to the proposed development.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know who's going to be presenting. I'm assuming somebody's going to present.
Yeah, I think tonight we've got Russ.
Russ, are you going to be the presenter?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do you want to share your screen?
One sec here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yep.
Yeah, so I can't see where to attach this to it or add anything for you guys to see.
Along the bottom, there's some buttons on the Zoom screen. It says, and the green button says share screen. So if you click on that one, and you can choose the screen to share.
Where's the thing? So I gotta open this.
Russ, can you see the green button down there?
I can, yeah, I'm just bringing up the proper page here before I add it. So this will be this. There you go. Just
There you go, there's your project. Scroll down.
Okay, can you guys see this now?
We can see your window of your desktop, but not your file.
So maybe just try sharing again with the open file.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. Okay, we got it now.
Okay. So just so you guys are aware, Mark Johnson was supposed to be presenting this for me tonight, but to be honest, I haven't been able to get a hold of him for a few weeks, and I hope his health is okay, because I've not been able to get a hold of him. But here we go. So here's 2545 Doctors Road. These are the designing plans. Is there any specific order you guys want me to go through here?
Nope, just give us the best description of the project that you can. We have a package with plans, elevations, views, so probably everything that you have as well.
Okay, yeah, so as Lainey already mentioned, it's 5 units, 2 duplexes, and 1 single at the bottom. They're all 3-bed, 2-bath, a modern design with views of Departure Bay. So here's some of the elevations you can see of the attached units in Block 1.
Maybe can you try to rotate it just to see? I don't know that I can rotate it.
Through the chair, Russ, would you be able just to, are you able to rotate your images? Just thinking for online viewers, then the images will be horizontal? Thanks, perfect.
You can do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks, that's great.
Okay, so here's Block 2 exterior elevations with the floor plans. And I don't know if Lainey let you guys know or not, we did make some recent changes to garages and lower floor plan layouts as per her suggestions prior to submitting. Adding room for the garbage containers in the garage. There was no allocated areas exterior previously. And here's Block 3. This is the single unit. This is closest to Doctors Road. And then once this is done, I can bring up some other images for you if that's what you guys would like to see. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yep,
So that's a single unit.
it just disappeared.
Yeah, sorry. Can you see that again or no?
No.
Nope.
Okay. Share that. Yeah, I did.
Share button.
Okay. You guys can see that again?
No, sorry, we can just see the documents again, if you could just share the image. There we go.
Okay, so that's a shot looking from Doctors Road going up. That's the single unit you can see. That is the entry on the right going up. And I'll just go to the next photo here for you. Okay, you guys can see that?
Yes.
So that's the side elevation of the single unit. At the bottom. With bike storage, this here. That was one of the items we added with Laney prior to. That's the front entry of the single unit. And you can see this is what the view they're going to have of Departure Bay right here. These are pretty lifelike images. You guys can see that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, this is block 2. This is the first duplex coming up from Doctors Road. Front elevation view. And here's the back elevation of block 2 of the duplex. So this area right here, you guys can see my mouse?
Yes.
So this is the one area where we have a variance requirement for the landscape side yard setback. And the reason for that is to fit the parking. This is the only way we can fit the parking. So this area right here is what's bumping into that side yard setback. Do you guys have any questions or concerns regarding that?
There may be questions when you're done your presentation.
Okay. Move along. Okay, here's block 3. The last attached duplex at the top, furthest away from Doctors Road, front elevation.
Yeah, again, we're not seeing the photo.
You don't see that one?
No, we're just seeing your desktop again.
Okay,
That's it.
there it is. You can see that now?
Yes.
Okay, so one thing I'll point out, we've added this park bench for resident and public seating. That was something that was suggested by Laney that she thought we should add, we didn't have originally. So there's a seating area for them. And then this area right here against the parking stalls, again, is the one variance requirement. So it's in between block 3 and 2 and in between block 1 and 2. Yeah, and as well, I forgot to mention, behind this bench, there's bike storage right there. I don't know if you can see the image of the bike behind the bench.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's it for the exterior elevations in 3D plans, as well as the interior layout of the building project.
Okay. Did you want to mention anything about the landscaping treatments and design?
Yeah, so I have Jeff with me. He's the landscape designer. He can speak regarding that. I'll get in the computer. Hi there.
Hi.
So, one second, let me just pull this up. So when we did the design for the Doctors Road property, we wanted to create a buffer around the south and west side of the property to limit the view from the properties on the south side. As well, we try to employ drought resistance vegetation in all the beds that were available. The parking limited the space for plantings, but we tried to achieve as much as we could in those areas. The front of the project, we put in a stormwater feature, also a number of trees that we employed for the project in the front to give us a road frontage, with giving us a little bit of privacy for the Block 1, but still not break the view from the deck on the Block 1 house. So we felt that the minimalistic styling of the houses of the townhouses led towards somewhat of a simplistic landscape design for the property as well. So that's what we employed for the project, as Russ showed you through his images. Russ, can we click through to the next image? Yeah, I think it's the next image. Just go through it. Okay. Click that one. Okay. No. Next one should be the full one. There you go. So this is the layout of the front of the property. We wanted to make sure that as you can see from the upper deck here, that we were still having a peak of view of Departure Bay for that structure, and also give it some privacy around the side yard, and obviously on the entranceway as well. We wanted to create as much foliage on the north facing side of the property for that lower deck area as well, so that they could entertain out there. Also at the back of the project, where the bike racks were, let me just go back to that one. We've left the grass area, rest of the picks back there. So, yeah. Okay, share screen. And then I get this one here. Is this one? Which one are you trying to see? This one here. Yeah, okay there. Yeah. Okay, can you see this image?
No.
Okay. So behind did you say no or yes?
No.
Oh, okay.
On the desktop again.
Is that up?
Yep.
Okay, so behind the bike rack, or the bike storage, the short-term bike storage and the park bench, we've left a grass area behind here so that owners of the townhouses, block 1, block 2, block 3 could use that as a kids play area or gathering area in behind that. So we left that somewhat sparse just as a grass area. There's irrigation covering the whole property, all on drip except for the grass area in the very back of the property. Everything else that's employed in the project is float maintenance, mulch, river rock, to minimize maintenance as much as possible. And that's all I have to add to the presentation.
Okay. Any final comments or thoughts or? You're done.
That's everything from us, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I will start, I just gotta go back a couple of pages here. Okay, so we'll start with design panel members. Any questions for staff?
Yeah, I'm wondering about the shared driveway and what kind of rules govern that. Previously on the property that we're talking about, it was a duplex. So the owners on the other side that share the driveway now will have 5 residents feeding into there. So the driveway essentially becomes more of a road, I would think. And I'm just wondering if the neighbor is consulted or has a say in this. Just curious about how that works.
So the
Yeah, so you're right, the duplex to the right of this property.
Russ, can you hang on one sec?
Yep.
The question is actually to staff, so we just want to get staff's response.
Okay.
So respectfully through the chair, so there is an existing access agreement with the property to the north. So a portion of that road, sorry, I don't have the exact measurement, it might be around 2 meters is on the northern portion, and then the rest of it should be made up on the southern portion. So we're going to require a minimum width of 6.7 meters, so it's going to meet our bylaws for access, for two-way access. But as for consultation, there's already an easement in place that the property owners would have been in agreement whenever that was put, that this property was developed. Other than that, there won't be any notice, I guess, to the neighbors, other than it will go to a council meeting if required, or it might be delegated, so.
Yeah, it's just the first time I've seen an infill where there's a shared driveway. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, and seeing no other questions for staff, I will open it up to questions and comments to the applicant. I will start with, I just gotta get the right faces here. Kevin.
Charles, and thank you very, very much for the presentation. These are the type of presentations that I really like to see. Infill projects are really important to our city. Taking RS1 zone properties and turning them into projects where we can have higher density is really, really important to our city. And so I think what you've done here is really good. I really like how you cited the buildings and the form and character. I like the part. It's really clean and simple. I think that there could be some work done for articulation on some of the elevations to add a little bit more character to them, and also especially to the entries. There isn't a lot of weather protection for the entries, and I think you can do a lot with that, and also in defining entries. Aside from that, I like what you've done with the big concept, except it's really unclear to me how the front of the property is really defined from a landscape concept. And in the last concept, it talks about, you talk about grass areas and stuff, and when I look at the renderings, it's really not defined. So I'd really like to hear your rationale and what you're really trying to achieve in the front area.
Am I okay to talk?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So more or less in the front area there, we wanted to, of course, make it look nice for the entry, but also have, usable play area for the, I guess that'd be considered the backyard for Block 1. I wanted to keep it open for buyers, whether they're, retired or young families, so there's room to enjoy art and kids to play, and that was the idea behind the grass there, and to try and maximize that area.
So I would suggest that you really have a defined plan of what you want to do with that area because of the shape up front and the angle of the property line. I really think you particular to that area and make sure that that is not more of like an amenity space, but is kind of like the to the property because that's your entranceway, and I really think that needs to be identified to be really important. So aside from that, I really like performing character is really good, except I really think to identify some of the thoughts and make sure they're articulated, and the landscape component to the front of the property. But well done. It's a really good project. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Great. Thank you for your presentation. I agree with what Kevin said about this being a really nice infill project, especially for this neighborhood where you have the larger lots like that and you have the opportunity to do this. I would like to, I think the landscape plan needs further clarification in the uses and intent and how the people connect to the different spaces. So I would like to see a bit more clearly defined landscape plan. Also, I would like for you to, could you explain a little bit more detail your stormwater management feature? So are you bringing water, what's happening there? Where's the water coming from? Is it coming off of the buildings and into that site? How is it functioning?
I'll let Scott Stevenson, a civil engineer, answer that question. He's on board.
Thanks, Russ. Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So there is a combined stormwater management feature with the landscaped area beside the Block 3, that single unit. And my expectation is that we'll direct most of the roof water to that area there. But we also have two other locations that are underground under the main parking areas between the other two units, or blocks, I should say. That'll act more like a rock pit where we'll have the parking drainage and the other routes heading towards the underground rock pits to deal with the stormwater.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. What I wanted to make a comment about is I agree with the staff. I think your planting, you do have a lot of landscape left over given that you're putting in 5 units, is that right? I would love to see you maximize the plant material, increase the biodiversity of your site, look at adding more trees, maybe in the back. That might be, you could create some nice canopy there for that building. I just see a lot of hardscaping, and I think you could improve your site just on many layers, from biodiversity to stormwater management, by having a bit more robust planting And I don't see it increasing your maintenance. We have found over time, the more plants, the less weedy. So that whole area of mulch could be full of plants, varying from not just grasses, but why don't you contemplate flowering plants so you can bring in more bees and bugs and that kind of thing. You have a good opportunity to have a really robust edge there, and I'd like to see that sort of evolve a little bit more than what is being presented. And same with the stormwater management water feature. There's no need for it to be completely covered in rock. If you allow the plants to fill in, you can have a more richer environment, not only above ground but also in the soil, instead of covering it with just rock. And you also, again, reduce maintenance. I actually think it's an oversight we have, that we think putting down rock is less maintenance, and in fact, it can add more in some cases. So I guess my overall comment is I'd like to see a more refined landscape plan. I don't think this has been fully resolved, and especially with how each space is used and how the pedestrians move through each space and interact with it. So I'm going to leave it there and wait to hear the rest of the panel's comments, and if I can clarify my recommendation. Is that okay, Charles?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Tony.
Thank you. I think that Kevin commented quite well on the desirability of this kind of infill project, and the fact that the buildings themselves were designed as simple, contemporary, clean lines, and I think that's great. I think that Kate did a good job of addressing the landscaping on the site. That's her area of expertise, and she said it much better than I could. It just seemed pretty sparse to me, and some of her comments, I think, could be taken constructively to enhance what you've already started to do there. So the only thing left for me to talk about is the paved areas, and I think unfortunately your 3D renderings sort of, because of the angle or they were slightly distorted, and they showed what appeared to be in the renderings at least acres of paving, with a big drain in the middle, which was unfortunate, but that's probably not how it's going to look in reality. But it did emphasize the fact that there's an awful lot of paving here, and the drawings didn't show any attempt to sort of mitigate that by way of different textures, different colors, possibly even different materials or something like that, just to kind of liven it up, break it up, and not make such of a barren feature out of those paved areas. I think what you've done on the side main driveway is good, with the pedestrian pathway delineated separately, and I just think there's perhaps more that you could do on the actual parking areas themselves. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Tyler?
Thanks, Charles, and thanks, Russ and everyone, for the presentation. In fact, Kevin's comments captured it well, but I very much agree with Kate, and I think because of some of the cleanness of the building type and sort of the way that the site's been laid out, the lack of landscaping even shows up even more. I think that design probably lends itself to having quite nice landscaping, and I agree with all staff's comments on that, everything Kate said, and I think I think the landscape really doesn't deliver on this project for how great this project could be in it. So I think what Kate said and staff's comments could constructively address this and make a good infill project, a great infill project.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. And Marie?
Thanks a lot. Again, I reiterate the importance of the infill, but I think you have a wonderful property there with its proximity to the beach, the views, and so on. So, it's well suited to a really good quality building and development. So I one thing that I think would really help is to help it fit better into the neighborhood. It stands out as quite different from the other houses. I drove over there, had a look, and in your proposal you suggest there's really no single character to that area, but there is. There's the historical character of the old cottages that used to be there. There's also the, they were often, many of them were replaced with sort of 70s style gabled roof buildings, and you're putting a very flat roofed building, which the only buildings it really sort of relates to is the sort of multifamily housing next to it, and you're wanting to cover that and hide it. So I think you could fit into that neighborhood a lot better by enhancing and doing some things with your form and character of the building, but also with this long discussion on the landscape. I think that would help. The other houses are surrounded by some landscape, with lots of trees and so on. Of course, it's an older neighborhood that's already filled out, but your idea to put, sort of wood chips and stuff doesn't really fit in with that area at all. And I think what I'm seeing in that neighborhood is people looking after their homes, fixing them up, and those are going to be long-term projects. So I think, and the project right next to you is obviously a new building that they've put in, sort of a contemporary arts and crafts, like you mentioned. So I'm wondering if there's ways that you could look at your building and make it look a little bit more residential, add some character to it that might help it fit in just a little bit more. I'm finding your design with the sort of white color and then the strong lines everywhere is really strong, and then your flat roof. In fact, in many ways, the building looks a little bit more like a commercial building than a residence. I think the staff have pointed this out a little bit, maybe doing more with your balconies, even moving them around the building or something like that. I think there's things that you could do to make those buildings even more exciting looking and fitting into the neighborhood as well. But I think the landscape changes and really developing that will really help as well, especially if you keep the buildings quite plain looking. Because as it is, I think it's going to stand out a little too strongly and too much pavement. So I'd like to see less of that. More of an emphasis on a kind of nice residential property that's attractive and fits with the neighborhood. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mary. I, as usual, I don't actually have anything to add. Everybody has picked up the points that I was going to raise in successive order, so that's great. But yeah, I definitely agree that the form and character of the development has great potential. I think it's not being fully described or realized in some of the presentation materials, so we're just kind of grabbing for a little more depth and information, but the potential is definitely there. So I think with if we can craft a motion with some recommendations and some comments, that will give you some good guidance moving forward with staff. I just gotta go back to the beginning here.
Sorry, Charles, I forgot to make one mention of something, and no one else brought it up. May I, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
I remember the note about the retaining walls, like we don't have enough information about what's going on there, and I think that there may be some issues or things that need to be addressed regarding the retaining walls, so I just wanted to make a note, retaining walls.
Okay, and yeah, it kind of brings me to a point that I was going to get to, but I'll get to it now. And Tyler mentioned it as well, I think. There are a number of staff comments that I think are good comments, and we have tried in the past to say just follow the staff comments, but that hasn't worked. So retaining walls was one of them. More information about materials and heights for the proposed retaining walls. Were there any other specific comments that staff made that we want to include? Does anybody want to scan them quickly and see?
I think all of them are really quite appropriate, Charles. I think they really need to be addressed.
Okay.
If I may, through the chair, one thing that can be helpful, certainly staff will continue to work with the applicant, and we will, after we gather referral responses, provide a comprehensive letter and continue to work with the applicant, including any potential design considerations, but if you feel there's one area or comments that you want to focus on or emphasize, you can make a recommendation on those. Or if there's anything staff have missed that you want to make a recommendation on, that might also be part of your recommendations.
Okay.
I would just add, Carlos, if I can jump in.
Yep.
There was one staff recommendation that I disagreed with, which was regarding the siting of the buildings, and that they preferred to see a duplex unit closer to the street, I believe. And I felt that how the applicant designed the project with the single unit closer to the street, to get it closer to the street, worked a lot better. So that would be the only thing in the staff recommendations that I would disagree with.
Okay, I think what I'll do just very quickly is I'm just going to go through staff comments and highlight the ones that align with what we've been discussing. Because there are some that are completely in alignment with what we've been talking about, and there's a few that are different, as Rainey mentioned. So there's staff comments starting with siting. So there's site lighting within the parking areas and along the pedestrian walkway. I think we can agree that's a pretty standard comment. Confirm location and details of the pedestrian walkway and access to the bike storage area. So I think that's been partially addressed with the change in paving. But along with the whole landscape plan, that could be fleshed out some more. This is the one that Kevin just mentioned, redesigning the units so that the duplex is at the front. I think we've all sort of mentioned that we are okay with the presented layout and siting of the units. So I don't think we would incorporate that one. Variation in paving in front of each entrance, so that gets to what Tony was mentioning and I was going to mention as well. So that's 3 on siting. Sorry, I'm going to lose my voice. On building design, so there was consider adding further variation in material or articulation, and then it's specific to the rear elevations, but I think if we just incorporated Kevin's comments about further articulation in materials for entrances and for the buildings, then that's covered. Additional glazing and larger balconies for blocks 1 and 2. We didn't really discuss the specifics of the building, so I don't know if we want to be that specific. I think maybe we just incorporate the variation in material and articulation for the buildings. And doors to the rear elevation of block 1 to provide access from the units to the landscape area. And again, that kind of goes to what Kate was talking about on how the units are interfacing with the landscape. This is going to be really hard to craft. Anybody have any comments so far?
I'd like to add something about the amenity area too. They've got the bench just at the end of the driveway. I don't know how many people are going to just sit on the bench with the bike rack behind it. You might want to utilize that space at the back and create a little patio area and a little seating area with trellises or barbecue area or something a little more inviting than what you're proposing there. So again, it's just looking at that whole plan and how do you, I think Charles put it really well, how the buildings fit with the landscape and how people use that space and how to really enhance that and make it an attractive yard.
Mm-hmm. I would just jump in and add on to that my most critical concern about this project is the landscape concept, and I don't like to do this, but I really feel that the applicant should come back with a revised landscape concept for this project, because I feel that it's almost critical, because of all the hardscapes and everything, of how this project is going to succeed, that we really address how everything, not only the front area, but also how it works to the site and the rear of the site, that I really feel that this is going to be the success of the project. And I don't would like to do this, but I really feel that we should really see a revised landscape plan concept and make sure that it's going to suit the project.
Okay, understood. But I see where you're coming from, and I agree, because I'm just making some marks on my notes here, and pretty much everybody has commented on that aspect of the project. Not just the landscaping, but its relationship to the buildings and how the site's going to be used. It's a pretty key component of the overall design. So, and I know we've had projects in the past where it was important that we saw it again just to make sure that you know the message got through, if I can put it that way. So I think if that is general sentiment, if we make that a motion or a part of the motion, we can articulate some of these recommendations, and then include in the motion that the applicant return with the landscape plan. Okay. So what I'm going to suggest is, and it's a tricky one. There's going to be a lot of recommendations, but the ones that we focused on, there's the additional articulation and use of materials, weather protection for the buildings, particularly the unit entrances. Specifically to the landscape, Kate's comment about increasing the biodiversity through plant selection and quantity of plantings throughout. And then a more refined landscape plan with a focus on the interaction of people in the landscape. So that's kind of what we would like to see come back. Variation of material, pattern, texture in the paving areas between the buildings, basically throughout. Marie's comment, and I think we can call it a recommendation, unless you tell me differently, that the design, both the form and character and the landscape design, take cues from the neighborhood context. And then retaining walls, more detail on retaining wall height and materials. Consider enhancing the amenity area with trellis and landscaping. And then I think staff comments incorporating the site lighting comment. That's already covered. Variation of paving is covered. And plantings, retaining wall. So I think that is a good mix of our recommendations and staff recommendations. And I have no idea if you were able to capture that.
I think I got most of it, but we might have to talk after.
Okay. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay, I missed one.
Okay, so very quickly, we can figure out the wording, but basically there's the articulation of the building form and character, generally speaking, the biodiversity of plantings, more refined landscape plan, variation of material in the paving areas, taking cues, form and character and landscape cues from the neighborhood context, more information, specific information about retaining walls, and enhancing the amenity area. Phew. Okay, and does anybody have any comments on the variance for the landscaping along the parking areas, or is that generally going to be tied in with the landscape plan?
I'm totally fine with the variance.
Okay, so it sounds like we're going to look for a motion.
I'll make the motion, Charles.
Okay, thank you.
So I will make a motion to accept the application as presented for form and character, but I would like the applicant to return with a landscape concept that is fitting with the recommendations. And with respect to the form and character, I want the applicant to respect the recommendations that we've made, and I would support the variance.
Okay. And is there a seconder? Tony? Yeah. Okay, and any further discussion?
I would just add that remember, this is just, they're returning only for the landscape concept. I trust the applicant to work with staff to deal with form and character, and this is just strictly, they're going to be returning with a landscape concept.
Okay, I think that's understood. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? And none opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Russ, just, so we'll follow up with a list of the recommendations and the next steps, but you're free, you and your team are free to leave. We'll move on to the next application shortly.
Okay, thanks guys, appreciate your comments. We're gonna take them definitely into consideration and work on that as much as we can. Am I able to make one comment regarding the form and character that didn't really get brought up tonight?
I think at this stage, I think you can work with staff and work back and forth with them on the comments and the recommendations.
Okay, thanks guys.
Sure, thanks.
Okay. I'm quickly clicking through my PDF here. All right, second application. Is everybody here, by the way, for the second one?
Yes.
Okay.
Looks like it.
Yep, I see Joyce. Okay, second application, DP 001240 for 680 Pine Street. And it doesn't tell me who's introducing it. Yep. Lainey's introducing this one again.
Thank you. So now we've got development permit application number DP 001240 for multifamily development with 4 units located at 680 Pine Street. The property is zoned R14 Old City Low Density 4-plex residential and is designated neighborhood in the official community plan. It falls within development permit area 9, commercial, industrial, institutional, multiple family, and mixed commercial residential development, and development permit area 8, Old City neighborhood. The general development permit area design guidelines and the Old City multiple family residential design guidelines apply to the proposed development. And tonight, I'm not sure if it's Joyce or Douglas from Summers who are going to be giving the presentation, but we also have Brad, the landscape architect, and Percy, who I think is also with Joyce.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Very excited again to be presenting another project density infill site in the Old City Quarter. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just want to confirm everyone can see the screen.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. This is an aerial site, or an aerial photo of the site. We've got it outlined here in red. The front is Pine Street. The rear is an access lane. And as you can see, we've got mostly residential adjacent to the site, but definitely up the street we have a light commercial area. If we go, let's dive into the site plan here. So basically, the concept behind the project is to provide 4 separate buildings. Based on our buyer demand, we created 4 separate detached units. It gives us a couple advantages. The buyer pool is looking for separate buildings as opposed to attached walls. It allows for kind of identity of it its own and its own unit, and it allows for maximizing light on 4 sides. In addition to that, we've created private spaces around the building that each unit individually has ownership over. In terms of the site plan, we've created 2 units facing Pine Street here, access from the road, and then an interior sidewalk that brings you back to 2 additional units in the rear, which face this public sidewalk, or more public sidewalk. This provides actually access into the back where we've located our parking. Parking comes in off the access lane. We have a trash enclosure here. We've got our rain gardens behind, sort of encompassing the trash area. We have our 5 parking spaces, and then we also have an amenity which is located right here. One more thing, we've got bike parking in the back as well, for bike storage. This gives us a couple images of adjacencies. In terms of forming character, we're creating a simple gable, fitting in with a lot of the pattern that you'll see in the Old City Quarter. We've got front porches, front doors. We're changing the patterning, including heavy trim, using a more traditional form for the windows, and also creating a different color palette for each unit as a sort of an identifying feature, but also adding interest to the project.
Hey Joyce, have you maximized your screen? My computer is looking somewhat small.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see here if I can. Yeah, I'm at max. I'm sorry. I'll go into the SketchUp model in a minute, but I know you guys have a package of this as well, but this is the front elevation along Pine Street. Up on the top here, the lower elevations are viewing it from the side. And we've got the other side and then the rear. So I'll flip to the SketchUp model. I think maybe visually you guys can see it. We're using arbors in the front to act as identifying features of where to enter the site itself. This is one variance that we're requesting, is that this arbor or trellis is actually over height. So that's one variance that we're requesting. You can see the front doors here, the nice sort of residential look that we're getting. And then as we will rotate around the site, you'll see the walkway that brings you to the back unit. The amenity feature for the residents, the trash are in the back, and then we have the 5 parking spaces. And that leads me to the final variance that we're requesting, which is basically changing one standard stall space to a small car space. So that puts us at over our sort of allowable percentage. Just based on the site width and maximizing amenity and rain garden, it benefits us to have an additional small car instead of a standard space. I will let Brad elaborate on his landscape. We'll stop sharing.
Hi everybody. I'll share my drawing, which is actually, you can see it. I've opened it up in model space because it's kind of easier to see the landscape. Okay, so can you see it here? Essentially, with the landscape, you can see on this project what we've really focused on here is putting in a lot of detail in the materiality, breaking down the surfacing into varieties of different paving textures. Some of that is to make it very clear and define the parking spaces, because it's a tight little courtyard and the spaces work, but it's good to define them, and I wanted to break them up into their various textures. And then part of the surface texturing is for wayfinding and to delineate the private versus semi-private spaces. And so you can see the walkways are textured differently than the porches, and which are kind of like The porches function as little outdoor patios for the units. And we've also incorporated lots of little planting zones into this, so it's got a softness as well. Where possible, I've added little trees, sometimes in raised boxes, and sometimes in the ground, depending on where it's located. In these spaces between the buildings, I've got sort of side yard access, so you can come from your front porch and walk around to your back area with stepping stones on river rock kind of gravel. And then I've incorporated raised planters between those, which incorporate fencing and some bamboo in planter boxes, so they're in containment, to give a very lush green kind of environment, a very unique environment for each of these units. Also incorporated an arbor over the amenity space in this location with its tree, a large shade tree which will provide shade for the arbor and also for the parking area. In the front, we've got the litter garbage enclosure, which is a fenced enclosure, but I've also incorporated a stormwater feature behind it. We have a bit of space there, so there will be a water-loving tree here and some river rock and grasses and an infiltration basin adjacent to the lane. And then moving along, there's I've provided an area for an upright cedar hedge to buffer this neighbor on this side. On this side, we have little planters as well, and we have some small trees for each of the units. And these have a front porch space, which is quite generous. It's not just a tiny little space. It's kind of about the size of a standard patio. But we also, on the back of these units, they have another generous open space pavered, and then an associated small area of green with each one of those. On Pine Street, Joyce showed the arbors, the individual entrance arbors, to create the sense of each one of these places where people would have wayfinding. They would come into an arbor, and this one being the arbor that leads to the two back units. I've incorporated 4 street trees, I guess, probably Schedule 1 trees, not super large, something like an upright beech, I'm thinking, for these. And that would kind of complement the look of the architecture, I think, would be a unique kind of a tree look. And that's generally the landscape plan.
Anything else, Joyce, or no? Okay, thank you. Sorry. I will ask, everybody's moved around. This is great. Panel members, any questions for staff? Seeing lots of shaking heads. Okay, I will open it up to questions and comments to the applicant. And I'm going to start with Tyler, because he's now at the top of my row, so.
Okay, thanks Charles, and thanks everyone for the presentation. Sorry, there's like bath time and play time going on behind me. You hear some noise, I apologize. But not really, that's just the Zoom life. Joyce, always really love your work, and I have really no comment there. The only comment I do have is on the landscape. I think it was great infill. I believe there was a staff comment around turf, fake turf, and if that is the case, I'd just say, first of all, I think our regulations should say no turf anytime, ever, anywhere, but they don't, so I will comment that I just would really appreciate it if that was not included and utilized. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Marie?
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot for a wonderful presentation. Went down and had a look at this lot and had never really spent time down there. I thought it was all industrial until I went down there and saw the houses. So I think it's a good spot for an infill. Just wondering a little bit about what was happening with the lane back there. It doesn't look like it's used much, and you're going to get a lot of transient people wandering through there. Are you gating off any parts, like at your front? Because everybody there, all the fences were pretty solid. Didn't look like anybody really used the lanes except people wandering through there.
At this point, we did not have the intention of gating off the back, but it's definitely a good food for thought. Yeah, we could discuss that.
Too bad, because I think what you might find is people transiting then through the property, because it'll actually open it up to the roadways. But I really like the landscape treatment as well. I can understand the trestles and trees in front, because you're going to have, because of that weird corner there, you're going to have a lot of traffic and light shining on the building. And I think that, it's not really the kind of place where you're going to sit right up front and be open to the street as much, just because it's a kind of a busy, unusual corner. It'll be nice if the city at some point really fixes that up, does something like that little island in there. It would really help. But that's sort of besides the point. I guess in terms of form and character, I think it fits really well in the neighborhood. Well thought out, an interesting project in that you're separating the townhouses rather than having them together. And I guess if it was the ideal world, I would pull out the middle unit and have a nice little open amenity space in the middle and only have 3 buildings there, but that would be the ideal world. And I'll leave it at that and let others comment on it. Thank you.
If I could just make a comment on that. To the one house to the right of that is a side flanking alley running through back into Farquhar. So I think if there are any pedestrian travels, it's going to be a lot easier for people to travel down that side lane than through the property itself. Unless their intent is to steal. And if that's the case, any property is going to be exposed to that.
For sure. Oh, I know I was going to ask you too. It looks like there was an old tree on the one side. It's south side of the property, I guess. I don't know if it belongs on the map, which property it was on. It looked like a really nice tree, but maybe it's too old. I'm just wondering if that's going to be saved or not.
I don't, Brian,
I would say it's not on our landscaping plan.
Okay,
Yeah, comments on it. So anyway, maybe I'll let Kate comment on that. She's journeying there. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Barry. Tony?
Thank you. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm sure I'm not alone in contrasting the landscaping and general presentation of this project with the previous one. I think this does everything right. I think, first of all, it's a very thoughtful and sensitive infill project, and has worked very creatively to max out the density on this site, which I think is, definitely setting an example for a lot of other similar kinds of projects. I really like the way that Brad, you dealt with these very tiny series of intimate spaces. I think you've done, just maxed every one of them out exactly right. It feels right to me, just looking at it and listening to your presentation and the overall layout of the site. I really commend the team for putting this project together. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Kate?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I will echo what Tony says. I think you've done a great job of making this site as beautiful as it possibly can be. And my only comment is the same as Tyler's. I'm really not a fan of that synthetic turf, and I would love for you to come up with something else, Brad. And I have one other note, Brad. You still have Vika Minor on your fund.
Oh, yes. I take it off every time I do something, but there's times I forget it's on there for 30 years, so it goes deep in the computer fabric.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe you're testing, not me.
Good catch on it, though. Good catch on it. And it's such a shame. It's such a pretty plant, but we don't advocate it and we don't use it, so it would be good. But in terms of this artificial turf, it's tough to find yet another material that has a soft characteristic. And so I'm searching for something that I can bring to you one day and go, Eureka, I found something that looks like lawn or feels like the feeling of a green space. And so far I can't find it. I mean, it could be wood decks. I mean, you could build little wooden decks there. You could try and plant it with just rough grass. But, you know, the problem is each one of these individual units would then have to have a push mower for that teeny tiny little space, right? And where do you put it? And, you know, do you go there? So,
Yeah.
you're looking for, I'll try and find people.
I would say I would prefer the deck to the grass because I think it gives a false sense of landscape when it really isn't. Does that make sense? Like, and it is a material that degrades and disperses itself into the environment. And but I do know that there are lots of. It seems like nurseries are coming up with really inventive seed mixes for no-mow, and there may be some product out there worth trying.
Well, I'm actually in my own yard. I'm trying, you know, to use Scotch moss and Irish moss as alternates and thyme and stuff. I've had very little success. Like, it's great for a while, and then it just kicks it, and it doesn't survive, and you end up with just bare dirt or invaded. You know, it's invaded by weedy grass. It's very tough.
Well, anyway, I believe you'll come up with a solution that won't be turf. And even if it's like, I've seen wonderful, even in my own yard where I don't want to go into too much detail, but you can have a crushed granite or stone and have the edges with your creepers. And then you still have that softening and usable space. So there's options.
That's a great idea. Maybe I'll look at that for the next one. These spaces, when I went through, you can see one of the things to respond to Tony. Thanks, Tony, for that comment, because we go into very fine detail on these tiny projects, right? So I'm not adverse to showing that kind of detail, Kate, because we are already there. We're already going into every corner, and you know.
It is great. Like your team does really nice infill projects, and always happy to see them.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I support the variance of just to put it out there, the height variance request on the street edge, and the parking variance too.
Okay. Thanks, Kate. Kevin?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Very nice presentation as usual. Joyce and Brad, I tell you, you're probably one of the best teams that we've ever seen in doing presentations for infill projects here in the city. And thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And there's nothing I really have to say that's bad about this project. I think you really have hit it out of the park. And what you did with the siding, Joyce, and how you presented the buildings, and Brad, how you related to it, and the landscape concept, the density of your palette, Brad, with your trees and everything is out of the park. It's really, really, really well done. I support the variances. Nothing I can say bad about it. I really, really like it. I agree with my other commenters about artificial turf and anything you do with that to eliminate that and find it to be better. But this is a real special project. And if anything, when I first looked at the project, Joyce, I looked at the form and character of the buildings, and I thought they were really plain and boxy. But when I look at the character and how it fits with the neighborhood, I think after I looked at the context, I really felt that everything's going to fit it perfect. So I really like the project. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Can I comment on this artificial turf issue? So after our presentation at 111 Halliburton, which as a sidebar, the city rejected all of our variance requests and killed the project, I went into great detail on artificial turf, went to other municipalities that have adopted it in public spaces, and picked up a whole bunch of technical data on it, and many municipalities are moving towards artificial turf for many reasons. One of the things I learned, though, is you don't call it artificial turf anymore, because artificial turf in the 60s and 70s is quite different than some of the products today. So I would explain or write in the rationale that sort of the positive benefits and how a lot of public spaces are now using this material. The reason that we're looking at artificial turf here is, again, we're dealing with very, very small spaces, very, very starter homes. So where do you put your equipment to maintain the grass? And that was our consideration on Halliburton. Wow. So, and then realizing that the turf, we'll call it something else besides artificial turf, but that's where Brad, I agreed with Brad, to make the extra expense, to spend a lot of money, time and effort and detail of filling out the other areas of this project as far as landscape is concerned.
May I make a comment, Charles, to that?
Yep, go ahead, Kate.
Okay, that I have also done a lot of research into artificial turf, especially because I've worked a lot with childcare centers, and I used to work on a research team, and we were looking at the safety of materials. And there is a lot of evidence and that I can send your way that indicates it's not a safe material. And it is disappointing to hear that municipalities are adopting it. It also is a hotter material than concrete. It has higher temperatures than concrete. They've measured it and done tests. So there is also a lot of evidence to suggest it's not the right solution, and that like a deck or even concrete, in fact, is probably a better solution environmentally than putting in that turf. And we just have to get away from this concept of this sort of having this fake screen being adequate enough. So I kind of counter what, I just want to put that, just to say that there is a lot of evidence to say it's not the right product, and unfortunately, I don't think we've inquired enough in our municipality before we've gone and used this product.
I agree. I just want to jump in and support you on this, because all sites like this, strata sites, all of them have to be, they have to have a landscape concept maintenance plan, and whether it's lawn or not, they still have to maintain everything else that's there. And I totally agree with you on this. I think we need to deal with more concepts that be more natural and less non-natural. So, yeah, thanks, Kate.
Tyler.
Yeah, I'm going to agree more with some research as well, and even the Nile has gone that way. And there's a section of road that has some astroturf, and right in the center there's a dandelion growing, and every time I cheer when I see that dandelion trying to reclaim that space.
There's definitely, it's used a lot in Langford and stuff, and if there are some serious problems with it used in commercial settings or using it on roadways and big streetscapes and stuff, I don't do that at all. I'm not an advocate, I'm not supporting AstroTurf or whatever, but for certain applications, it goes to Doug's point of view of a starter home, and in a way, it's kind of like, when you buy your first home, you'd like to have a lawn, but the world doesn't allow us to have that much land anymore to have lawns, so anyway, it's not worth debating, really. Like, just take it out, we'll put something else in, like gravel, would work.
I do have one more comment, though. I think you brought up a very important comment, that the whole concept of lawn needs to be reconsidered, and what landscape is to a residential home. And my main reason is I've noticed that if you put something out there, other people see it and go, oh, that's a good idea, they did it, I'm going to do it. And that's why I'm really trying to push back on it, because I'm seeing it used more and more.
What would you suggest then as a very good pet-friendly, kid-friendly turf surface?
Well, I think you have to abandon this idea of turf.
So, well, what do you suggest for kid-friendly, pet-friendly surfacing?
Well, I did make a suggestion, which I think is not a bad idea, and I've done it in my own yard, which is like a really nice crushed stone surfacing and planting your edges with ground covers. I have sedums do fabulously in it. Time creeps along where it's not walked on, and so you get a really nice soft edge. I don't know what animals will do to that. I don't have pets, so, you know.
So what about children?
Oh, my children love it.
So is that
yeah, it's fine. I don't have it's a surface to play with. Actually, anything that's malleable for kids is great. They can pick it up, collect it, move it around. It becomes another material for them. So if you're open to that kind of messiness too. But I think it's not a bad idea, looking at something like that.
And I would just jump in on that because these days, the amount of amenity space that is going to be used for children on lots, whether it's residential or like single-family residential or in projects like this, they're so small that they really need to look to using outlying larger amenity spaces. So like what Kate mentioned is like Fuzzy Time is a beautiful product. We have it in our yard, and it's an amazing product, and it mind you, it doesn't bode well for things like kids, playing and stuff like that. But still, it's a beautiful product that if you put it amongst crushed gravel and stuff, that's what we have. It is a beautiful product, and it is a beautiful thing. And I really think that those types of things would really bode well in this type of situation. And you just have to rely on outlying neighborhoods to have playgrounds and stuff to support kids to be able to play in. But yeah, so I'll just stop at that. So thanks.
Okay. I think I'm going to call the discussion on turf versus no turf. Because I agree with everything that's been discussed, and top marks for the design and the presentation. But I also have to be a little nitpicky. Sorry, Joyce. The walkway that goes down the side of the property to connect to the rear units, is it sloped or is it stepped? Because there's quite a grade change as you go back, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I believe it's mostly, we went kind of back and forth, but it's actually sloped.
Okay, so you can...
And there's a step up along the patios that face the side yard. There's like a step up into those patios. But the sidewalk itself is sloped.
Okay. Because I think that would be the ideal, is to keep it sloped so that it's accessible, et cetera. But yeah, I wasn't clear if there were steps or not. But otherwise, yeah, it's a very well put together package, and thank you for presenting it. So I'm going to suggest that we have one recommendation. Not a popular one, but it's one recommendation. And that is that the applicant consider alternative treatments to replace the proposed turf material. And whether those are, as we've discussed, hard surface materials or planting materials, it's, we're not saying it has to be grass, we're just saying there might be some options that are more interesting, better, whatever the right words are, than using turf. Did I capture it? Was that the one recommendation? Could I ask someone to put, and we haven't discussed the variances. Kate said that variances are fine, so let's put a motion forward. And Kevin?
Yeah, this is a really great project, and obviously we're kind of just, dealing with the turf issue, but let's all just remember this is a real special project, and I'm more than happy to make a recommendation to accept the application as presented with the 2 variances, with the 1 recommendation regarding the turf, and that's my motion.
Okay, seconder? Tony? Okay. Any further comment, discussion? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? And it's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Great.
Thank you.
Great job, guys.
We'll see you in a couple of months.
Yeah.
Lots more coming your
Wait,
way.
no turf.
Can it be like all turf?
I use carpet.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thanks, Douglas.
Okay, and panel members, we have an item 5 on our agenda, which is other business, and there's apparently a new member appointment announcement.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come to the panel and let you know that Council has appointed 2 new members, two new members at large to the panel. And so these are filling the 2 vacancies. This is, and the new members are named Angela Buick, and she's a planner, professional planner. And the other member is Jill Uswa. And I understand she's a landscape architecture background. I don't know too much, I haven't met her myself, but just to let you know that we are expecting to see these new members at an upcoming meeting. And we're going to be just providing some orientation and training, answering any questions, but just to let you know, they've already been observing some of the meeting proceedings, so they have a sense and get familiar with our format and how we're doing this over Zoom, what kind of comments the panel members provide. So yeah, look forward to bringing them into an upcoming meeting, possibly our next meeting on September 23rd, but we'll keep everyone updated on that.
Very good.
Yeah, good.
Tyler?
Yeah, council reappointed me as the council liaison, so you guys are stuck with me till the end of my term as well.
I have a quick question once we're done taping, if possible.
Okay. Let's adjourn the meeting, shall we? If there's no other business, we'll call for adjournment of the meeting, and we can say goodnight to the recording and all that good stuff.